Good day. Welcome to Westchester Talk Radio. I'm John Marino. We are produced by Sharc Creative and made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built by Lipolis Electric. Don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis by Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth up and down the Hudson Valley to a fiduciary standard. By White Plains Hospital, by Michael Labriola, Landscape Design and Construction of Armonk, and by Tompkins Mahopac Bank. On the beat in Westchester, we are joined by Steve Greenberg, pollster, Siena Research Institute at Siena College outside Albany. Steve Greenberg, welcome back to Westchester Talk Radio. You have another new set of polling out, and at the top of the list is the new governor, relatively new governor of the state of New York. A look at Kathy Hochul.
That's exactly right. And it's good to be with you, John, and all the listeners. Right now, a little over 2 months into her tenure as governor, 42% of New Yorkers have a favorable view of Kathy Hochul, 26% have an unfavorable view, and we still have about a third, 32% of New Yorkers either have never heard of the new governor or don't know enough about her to have an opinion. Her favorable, John, compared to last month, identical, 42%. Her unfavorable went up from 17% last month to now 26%. Why? Republicans. Last month, Republicans gave her a slightly favorable view, 32-25. I think in the last month, Republicans have learned that Kathy Hochul is in fact a Democrat because now Republicans have a 23 favorable, 50% unfavorable view of the new governor.
Is this just basically a case of you become an incumbent and all of a sudden people who you thought liked you all of a sudden don't like you anymore?
Well, I'm not even sure it's that they liked her. They didn't know her. When we polled last month, she had been governor for 2 weeks. And I think people said, oh, new governor, let's give her a shot. Now they're like, oh, she's a Democrat. She's doing this policy. She's doing that issue. She said this. I don't like her anymore. In terms of her job performance, pretty much break even. 43% of New Yorkers give her a positive job performance rating. Slightly more, 45% give her a negative job performance rating. Not surprisingly, Democrats better than 2-to-1 positive. Republicans better than 2-to-1 negative. But independents on the negative side, looking more like Republicans in terms of how they feel about Hochul so far.
Mm-hmm. How about, I know you've run a couple of polls about Kathy Hochul running for election in 2022. I don't use the word re-election because she wasn't elected to begin with, but her potential Democratic primary challengers, including, I guess, the now former governor, Andrew Cuomo. He's still in the mix accepting campaign cash.
Well, and he's got $18 million in the bank. And so until he says he is not a candidate, given the public posture he's been advancing of late, we wanted to ask about it. So this is the first time Siena asked, and let me caution listeners, this is of enrolled Democrats. This is not likely Democratic primary voters come June. If past primaries are any indication, only about a quarter of Democrats will actually vote in the primary. And as it gets closer, we'll certainly start to look for likely voters. I think it's hard to determine who the likely voters are when we don't know who the candidates are. At the moment, we only have one declared Democrat running for governor, and that is the incumbent, Kathy Hochul. So what Siena did this month is we did 3 different horse races. In the first one, we have Hochul, the aforementioned Cuomo, Attorney General Letitia James, who has not yet made a decision on whether she's going to run or not, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, who says he's exploring it, and New York City Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, who's already formed an exploratory committee. And what we find among Democrats, all Democrats in New York right now, among those 5 candidates is Hochul has the support of 31%, Cuomo in second place with 17%, the Attorney General, James, 14%, Public Advocate Williams, 7%, and the New York City mayor pulls up the rear at the moment with 6%, with about a quarter of Democrats either undecided or saying it's too early to say. So then we took that result and we said, all right, let's get rid of Andrew Cuomo. Let's just do the four who, more likely, who have not held the office before, who are more likely to run it. In that matchup, Hochul widens her lead. So she has 39% support to James's 20%, a 19-point lead for Hochul. De Blasio 10, Williams 8. And then we said, what would happen if this became a little bit of a schoolyard political game and we got a game, a round of one-on-one, Hochul versus James. And what we see there is Hochul has a sizable lead, but not overwhelming. 47% for Hochul, 31% for James, 16-point lead for Hochul, very healthy, but she's not above 50. And again, we don't know who the candidates will be or how many there will be. So it's an early look. Hochul leads pretty much across the board, except in New York City. There, James and Hochul are competitive. But in the downstate suburbs and in upstate, Hochul has a commanding lead. With Black voters, James wins against Hochul, but with white and Latino voters, young and old voters, male and female voters, Hochul is in the lead by a long ways.
Meanwhile, on the Republican side, Andrew Giuliani is rising quickly up in the polls. Obviously, his name recognition is helping him.
Look, and I don't know that it's name recognition for Andrew Giuliani. I think it's name recognition of the name Giuliani. What we see right now, and we didn't do a Republican primary matchup like we did with the Democrats, unfortunately, because only 22% of the enrolled voters in this state are Republican. We really wouldn't have had a large enough sample to do a fair primary run. But what we did do is favorability ratings of the candidates. And former Westchester County executive, former candidate for governor, Rob Astorino, favorable 17% of voters, 16% of voters have an unfavorable view of Astorino, but 2/3 of voters either have never heard of him or don't know enough about him to have an opinion. Long Island Congressman Lee Zeldin, same issue pretty much, 17 favorable, 19 unfavorable, 64% either never heard of him or don't know enough about him to have an opinion. Now, Andrew Giuliani has never run for office in New York, has never held elective office in New York. But when we asked about his favorability rating, 27% of New Yorkers said they had a favorable view. 49% said they had an unfavorable view. And 24% said they had never heard of him or didn't know enough to have an opinion. John, I'm telling you, this is not a reflection of Andrew Giuliani. This is a reflection of his dad, Rudy Giuliani, because if 2/3 of New Yorkers have never heard of Lee Zeldin and have never heard of Rob Astorino, 2/3 of New Yorkers or more have never heard of Andrew Giuliani. But, the name doesn't hurt. Andrew Cuomo started when he started to run for office with the name Cuomo. His father had served 3 terms. It gave him an instant name recognition advantage. So Andrew Giuliani has a name recognition advantage right now, although I should point out, 27 favorable, 49% unfavorable. He's 22 points underwater. But again, we're going to have a campaign over the next 7-8 months for this Republican nomination for governor. And I think by the end of the campaign, all the candidates will be known to the Republican voters.
Andrew Cuomo with those unfavorable numbers pretty high at the moment. Yet, what do they say, Steve? When they stop talking about you, that's when you have to worry?
Well, I don't know. Andrew should hope people stop talking about him because his numbers keep getting worse. He had hit a record worst favorability rating back in September, but here we are in October, and right now his favorability rating is 33% favorable, 60% unfavorable. Again, a new record low unfavorable rating. And among Democrats alone, just Democrats, Cuomo's favorability rating, 49% favorable, 43% unfavorable. Barely favorable with Democrats. Contrast that with Kathy Hochul. Among Democrats, 58-12. Letitia James, among Democrats, 54-12. So both of them are unknown to about a third of Democrats, but among those Democrats who know them, overwhelmingly favorable. Not true of Andrew Cuomo.
Donald Trump, I guess, is not the most unfavorably rated politician in New York State at the moment.
Not at the moment. He has been for the last 5 or 6 years, John.
Wow.
He was, look, we've talked about it. It's an overwhelmingly blue state. 50% of the voters are Democrats, 22% are Republican. No Republican has carried New York in a presidential election since Ronald Reagan back in 1984. So Donald Trump has always, before he ran for president, while president, since being president, has always been unpopular with New York voters. And right now, only 37% of voters view him favorably, 59% view him unfavorably. So he's underwater by 22 points. But as we just said, the aforementioned Andrew Cuomo, 3360, is underwater by 27 points. And take it one step further. The outgoing lame duck mayor of New York City, the Honorable Bill de Blasio, right now, 25% of New Yorkers view him favorably, 56% view him unfavorably. So he's underwater by 31 points. So Trump, for 5 years, had the worst favorability rating in New York. Bill de Blasio now owns that up.
You ran some numbers on what matters to New Yorkers, where crime came up as the key issue right now.
Absolutely. 82% of voters said that crime is a very important issue. 96% said it's an important issue, but 82% said crime is a very important issue that they want the governor and legislature in Albany addressing. And it's across the board. 83% of Democrats say it's very important, 86% of Republicans, 78% of independents. But also addressing systemic racism. 85% of voters say it's important, 61% say it's very important. But here we see a bit of a partisan divide. 76% of Democrats say it's very important. 39% of Republicans say it's very important, although 68% of Republicans say it is important. Ensuring more New Yorkers get the COVID-19 vaccination. 58% of New Yorkers say that's very important. And again, a partisan divide. 3/4 of Democrats say it's very important, 39% of Republicans, and 45% of independents.
Steve Greenberg, we thank you for joining us here on Westchester Talk Radio, the latest set of numbers about how New Yorkers feel about a variety of issues. Steve Greenberg, pollster, Siena College, Siena Research Institute. We'll talk again in a few weeks, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Great to be with you.
Great to be with you, too. Steve Greenberg here on Westchester Talk Radio. On the Beat in Westchester, produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built, and also by Lipolis Electric. Don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis by Hightower. Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard by White Plains Hospital, by Michael Labriola Landscape Design and Construction of Armonk, and by Tompkins Mahopac Bank. Catch all of our Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Dutchess, Orange, and Fairfield County talk radio programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube, and download our new Westchester Talk Radio app. Take it with you anywhere and everywhere you go. It's called Westchester Talk.